What's going on, guys? Bladezilla here, and today we're taking a look at a real cool knife from Shirogorov and a collaboration piece with R.J. Martin. You may have seen some of the other R.J. Martin pieces that I have done over the last little while in the Shirogorov playlist that I have running in my channel right now on YouTube, and this will be the latest addition to it. So this is, I believe, called the Denim Overkill, denim as in jeans. And that stems from this beautiful kind of jeans micarta thing that we got going on here, which looks unbelievable in person. It's thick, it's got a lot of texture, it's lightweight, and it's a beautiful knife. So I am going to experience this together with you for the first time, as I haven't really looked at it. Reminder, this is a coffee shop style conversation. I'm probably going to make some mistakes, but for the most part, we're just hanging out, having a good chat. As well, visit my website, bladezilla.ca, where I have a lot of this stuff listed for sale at any given time. Just added a F95 CD and a bunch of other knives. So lots of cool pieces in Canada, ready to ship. So there you go. Nice little plug for bladezilla.ca. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to look at this. This absolute beauty of a knife. So, like I said, I'm experiencing this for the first time with you, and I don't have a spec sheet, so we're going to kind of just figure this guy out. So, there we go. So, look at that. Okay, well, we're going to start with weights, measurements, all the good stuff. And let's get going. So, got my tape measure. Let's go. So if it's like the other Molten, yeah, it should be sub 9 inches, just by a hair, depending, but looking overall at about 9. Blade length of just under 4 inches, and handle, let's do the math, should be less than 5, so there you go. Pretty standard, which is, I believe, the same as the Molten Overkill. Size-wise, we've got a couple different R.J. Martin collab pieces here. So we're going to throw that in the middle, and let's do a little lineup. So the primary one would be our Molten Overkill, and that should look pretty similar. This is not the exact knife that I did my video on, but it is the same model essentially. We have our Russian Overkill. And we have our soft overkill, and another soft overkill. I don't know if I'm going to fit all these on here. And the third soft overkill I will put as well in here, just to kind of show. While I have them, I may as well do a video with them in it. So it's rare that I have a series kind of all in one go. I am missing the RQ36, which some lucky viewer actually sniped from me. So things happen, but there's kind of the current 6 of 7 minus the RQ36. But I think what we're going to do here today is primarily talk about the Molten Overkill and the Russian Overkill, because those are the frame lock varieties of this knife. And we're not going to really compare it a whole lot to the soft overkill, simply because of that reason. So there's kind of your three that I would really be kind of, as a primary looking at. But all three kind of have a different flavor, as you can kind of see. So M398, let me just double check before I commit to that. Yes, it was M398. Whew. Almost had a panic attack. M398, S90V, and MagnaCut. Whereas all the other soft overkills, I believe, are M398 as well. And they're all across the board the same, the only difference being the micarta. So, you're kind of seeing an interesting little pattern here with these collaboration pieces where they're actually changing the steels quite a bit. So, I don't have insider information at all, and I would kind of assume, based on this, like, are we going to see one more? I don't know, because they did 3 soft overkills, and now they're doing, these are your 3 overkills. So it's I'm kind of confused if we're going to see another one for another inlay version or what. But anyway, let's kind of just, I guess, take a look at. Let's get rid of the Russian Overkill. This is a very different knife, just based on its full tie-in milled. And if you know me, you know I love that. So these would be, I'd say, the two primary comparisons. And side by side, they're practically identical. If you look at the actual blade thickness, it's identical. Thickness of the frames, identical. Back spacers, everything's, as far as I can tell, identical dimensionally. And, it's always different when I'm looking under a bunch of light with you guys kind of talking through this. Maybe I'll find something where there is a variance. But for the most part, I believe it's the same kind of programmed machine setting to accomplish this. Unless I'm completely blind, which, very well may be the case as well. So I did weigh these as well earlier, and this one was about 3 grams lighter, being the Denim Overkill, or Jeans over Denim, Denim Overkill. 3 grams lighter, so negligible, which might just come down to the steel or the piece of micarta versus carbon. So I just assume it's negligible at 3 grams. But anyway, some food for thought. Let's get this guy. Ooh, beautiful action on the S90V blade and Magna Cut. Side by side, there's an overview of the two most recents. They're identical. So we still have the Shirogorov Bear in the top of both. Same standard drop point grind that we've really become accustomed to and love. And as far as I can tell, not a whole lot of difference between the two. So, there you go. There's kind of your quick overview between the two. In terms of comparisons in the Shirogorov lineup itself, before I get into the knife and waste your time, let's bust out a couple other inlays. So we're going to grab that beautiful F95 NL custom division knife, which is just begging to be compared to this one. They're really liking blues lately. Really liking it. We've got our Stellar Sprint Run for size-wise comparison. And remember, the angle of the camera kind of changes things a little bit. We've got our beautiful Mini Quantum. Blue as well. Kind of a little hint of blue to that, which is a nice little breakdown of the three. That's a nice trio there, actually, looking at this. Kind of, they work well together. And then our inlaid Neon NL, custom division knife as well, which is a really nice pair with the F95 NL. Has some blues, that kind of thing. So pretty cool across the board for the three kind of comparisons here, size-wise, F95, Stellar, Neon, etc. We've already looked at the other kind of comparison there between the Molten Overkill, the Soft Overkill, and the Russian Overkill. Let's get this out here slowly to admire its beauty. Ooh, beautiful knife. Probably the nicest F95 ever in the history of knives. Well, where do I start on this, guys? Well, I've already done, a multi, probably like 45-minute video on the Molten. So, based on what I'm seeing, and like I said, at the time of filming this, I don't have the specs in front of me. I don't have everything laid out. But, we've got a beautiful, thick piece of, I guess, jeans, quote, air quote, micarta. And this is awesome because, much like the Molten Overkill variety, having a big piece of carbon, it takes something that's, very symmetrical, typically, and it breaks it up with kind of like a unique pattern, right? And you can kind of see it's perfectly imperfect. It's got some dark spots, it's got some light spots, it looks like it's worn in, but that's, I can assure you, the micarta pattern itself, which is cool. And as you get to use these and as you you know, have it going in and out of your pocket, and maybe you get some, you know, perspiration on it and some hand oils and stuff. You know, they just develop a really nice kind of pattern over time. They get a nice little, what's the word I'm looking for, like patina to them. People love micarta. So I think it looks pretty cool. In terms of the knife itself, well, I can't quite tell what they did to the material here. So it looks like a raw titanium between the two, personally, unless it's a very light ano. But to me, it's more of a raw look. At least that's what I'm seeing, more of like a blasted kind of finish. And, you know, things really pop here because you've got, which I would assume is a titanium backspacer, like the Molten has a titanium backspacer. This kind of has that same fit and finish to it as that F95 NL, which is a stonewashed, a polished stonewash, I think. So if you can kind of look here and compare. Am I crazy in thinking that that's the same thing? I may be wrong. I'm normally wrong. But I'm getting vibes here of the Arum, the F3 Arum, in that I'm thinking it's a stonewashed, a polished stonewashed titanium. So, and it's big, man. It, you know, more than half the length of the knife in that backspacer looks real, real good. So you get that that polished stone wash. Let's just assume that's what it is. And you match the clip to that material. And then they usually match the collar as well on the hardware here. So if I don't know how close we can get in here, but I can tell it has a collar, obviously like the others, and it is the same as the pocket clip and the backspacer. So you've kind of got the three that match, which is, you know, found if I go grab any one of these. Let's grab that green micarta, soft overkill, just as a comparison, and you can kind of see collar, backspacer, clip, right? That's kind of across the board. They like to do that. So that same kind of pattern or design element is featured right through the line and is done beautifully well. In hand, beautiful, like beautiful example of an R.J. Martin collab piece here. Everything just fits nicely. It's very thin, quite a bit thinner than the soft overkill, which I will grab that one again just to show you the width of how thick those guys are. Side by side, it is a very thick knife, and hopefully you can kind of just see that in just the general appearance of how thick both the blade steel is, as well as the backspacer and the gap kind of between everything there. You know, it should be a pretty easy comparison. Whereas the Russian Overkill, I believe dimensionally, I think they're the same, or at least very similar, very close. So there you go. So in hand, fits great. It feels fatter despite the dimensions. Let's assume they're the same as the Russian Overkill, the full tie. It feels fatter because of the inlays. It also feels lighter because you should be able to see on the inside here. Yeah, the inlays come right through. So there's material missing on the inside. So it's a light knife. It feels really nice, which I love. You get all this milling, and the pattern kind of runs all the way down underneath and behind. Well, I guess not behind, but it runs around in conjunction with that beautiful micarta denim. Looks great. And then you kind of get these nice breakups where, you know, you kind of go from that kind of radial milling, you get a nice flat spot here, and then it goes into some other lines in a horizontal fashion. I don't know if you can see that or not, but hopefully you see it. Looks really, really nice. As I mentioned, we've got the bear on the blade here, which is awesome, the Shiro bear. But in addition to that, the main thing that I'd be looking at here is that they've actually polished the flats, which is a design element of a lot of their higher end pieces, where they kind of do like a little bit of a polished satin flat kind of look to it. And it's just, it's a beautiful thing. It sounds like Nick Shabazz, eh? It's a beautiful thing. But that's kind of off the beaten path. You're not going to get that in the way of any cuts, but if you do, oh well. On the other side, you've got an RJM logo. That's also etched in the same fashion. It just looks great. Absolutely terrific. It's an S90V blade, which should be written right up here. There it is. S90V. It's not centered, and I would have thought it'd be centered, but maybe they actually always write it off from the right to left. I don't know if that's a thing or not. I really haven't paid much attention to it, but let's take a look how they do it on the others. May as well, we got time. There's the Russian Overkill, and that's stamped right in there. I'm 398. The Soft Overkill, same thing, I guess it's not centered, so right to left, M398. And then Magna Cut, I would assume, would take up more space and fill that right up. But it should be right to left as well, yep. So that's what they're doing. That's good to know, because it looked silly to me when I first looked at it. It just, maybe it's because I'm used to seeing the Magna Cut of the Molten Overkill, but I thought that would be centered. Doesn't that look kind of weird? Or is that just me? It's probably just me. But I guess that's what they've been doing for a while, so not a big deal. The knife runs on Shirogorov's roller bearing system, single row roller bearing system, which is an absolute home run, and at this price point is a very attainable like knife to experience roller bearings for the first time. Now, if you're new to Shirogorov, they kind of have, I'd say, 4 main bearing systems, and then obviously washers on some of the old knives. But think of it as single row bearings as kind of a standard circular bearing track with ball bearings in it. So that's their base entry level point, which feel great. I've got some knives here, like this F95. This is on single row bearings, and you know, it feels great. It's very drop shutty and has no issues. Okay, so that's single row bearings. We go into dual row bearings, or multi-row bearings, sorry, which this Quantum has. And it's usually stamped on the inside here, so you'll see MRBS. And that's where they have kind of multiple ball bearings in a line, depending on the size of the knife. It's either 2 or 3 balls. And they're kind of in a pinwheel pattern, in a circle. So there's kind of 2 or 3 in a row, depending on, you know, Neon versus F95 or Quantum. And I actually don't know what the Stellar has. I have to look. That's besides the point. But what it does is it adds kind of rigidity to the interface between the frame and the blade. And they tend to float a little bit more. So both feel fantastic. Do I have a preference? Not really. So there you go. That's multi-row bearings. And then in these collab pieces, they bring in their custom division technology of the roller bearings. And think of them as hot dogs in a pattern, kind of in a circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. I don't know the number, maybe 12 or 15 in a circle. And that really adds a lot of side-to-side rigidity between the blade and the frame. And then it's a different feel to the knife. Like, they just float so smooth and so effortlessly and feel so good. Like, it's, oh. And remember, this one is, it's not used, it's not broken in. This will get even more special. You know, you flick this a few hundred times and build in a nice detent track. It's going to be just stunning. So anyway, beautiful knife. Love the technology. And then from there, they go into double row roller bearings, which take those hot dogs, cut them in half, and kind of stagger them in a custom pattern. And they're typically found on Sergey's full customs, with a few exceptions, I believe. But and it's just the next level feeling even from that. And I'd probably argue a little more surface area. And I haven't experienced many of those knives, let me tell you. They're not very common for a person of my pay grade. But some people, you know, they get into that full custom, and It's a lifestyle changer because you now live in a tent to afford them. I'm just kidding, obviously. Anyway, let's jump back into the Denim Overkill here, the Doc Holiday. So, a couple things, as we can see, as we flip from show side back to the where the business is, we can see a couple cool things here. So one, we've got an inverse bit, which is found on their custom division knives, and an inverse bit is essentially their standard bit, but flipped around. Now, you have to have a custom division tool to take this knife apart, okay? Which is another whole level of appreciation. I just so happen to have one right here beside me, and that is a custom division tool, and it's another work of art. If you have multiple Shiros, or you get into some knives with some fancy bits, I highly suggest tracking one of these down, because it is a must-have, absolutely. Sorry about that, just that I had a phone call, so I'm cutting there. But anyway, yeah, you want to get the tool if you have multiple Shiros, or you get into these special edition collaboration pieces that have those reverse or inverse bits. Very, very important, because on their standard bits, as you can see, you can probably get away with. I don't want to recommend a screwdriver, but you can if you're very careful. But, you can get away with a penny. You can get away with a debit card folded on itself. Something that's a material softer than the actual hardware itself. You can get away with it. But on the inverse bits, or reverse bit, I'm calling it inverse. On the reverse bits, the only real workaround that I've seen is like a brass punch filed with a hole in the middle. I've seen tweezers being used very selectively. You're just causing more problems for yourself versus just getting the right tool and being done with it. These are multi-$1,000 knives, and just get the right tools. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, back to my main point here. As we can see, we've got a couple different, on the business side, I guess. You can see there's some really cool technology going on with those proprietary bits, which some people are scared of. I personally think they add some funk, some flavor, some personality to the knife, not just being a Torx bit. So I love that. It's one of my favorite things. Okay, we have a metal lock bar insert / over travel stop here, which is cool. You should see it hanging down right below this little ball here, this little bit. That's a screw. That's the other end of a screw. So that guy is screwed in from the inside, and I always like to show this on my F5 how they used to be the other way around. So as you can kind of see here, they used to be a screw on the outside. And maybe I'll put that down. There we go. Yeah, it used to be a little screw there. And then on some of the later models, they've started to flip that around, and it just makes it look a little tighter, a little cleaner. And as we can kind of see here, it just looks better when they flip that around. And it puts it away, tucks it out. It's just a nice little touch. So they're doing that on these, and I don't think they're Russian Overkill. Yeah, no, they've been doing that on all these. So that technology is awesome. And then obviously that little box there is probably required for strength, I would imagine, and alignment. But remember, the metal lock bar insert does a couple things. One being obviously the interface between a titanium frame and an S90V blade in this case, or MagnaCut, M398, etc. You can tune that material to avoid any lock stick. So it's a really nice material to have interface between the two, and obviously acts as a replacement part. If you're flipping this thing out tens of thousands of times, it's metal on metal. Let's just assume it's going to wear out over time. So you can replace it. But the primary benefit is obviously in that material to material interface tuning. On the lock bar, we can see as I roll this knife towards you, it's actually a little elevated. It has a beautiful, nice little bevel cut into it, which adds super levels of comfort when you're opening and closing this bad boy. which is awesome. That's what I like to see. Anytime you have a raised lock, it's just so comfortable on your finger, especially when it's thin like this. They put a little bevel in it and it just feels right. Absolutely right. The detent appears to be tuned so that it can't fail. And I think if it's anything like the Molten, you should see a bunch of flecks in this frame. You ready for this? How cool is that? So that's the tuning that I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to try to open this as light as humanly possible. So you can see the flex that I'm putting into this thing. It's holding the blade in so that when it finally breaks that the strength of the detent, it should fly open. I'm gonna open it as light as humanly possible here. And where's the breaking point? There it is. Flies right out. And that's the RJ Martin. That's what they're known for, is that kind of click sound, that real nice feel to it. They feel incredible. Action is just ridiculous, but it's that RJ Martin crisp feeling that the knife has. That's what they do. So love it. From a side profile, I'm reminded of the Stellar on this tip here. So you can run a lanyard, but as per the Stellar, and I always like to show this knife, it's a bit of an eyesore. People don't like seeing that hole for the lanyard on the back. So what Shirogorov has done on a lot of their own pieces is they've integrated that hole into the back spacer here. So if I grab that NL again, you can kind of see what they're doing. Is from the side profile, it's nice and full, it's beautiful, but then your lanyard hole is just kind of sunk into the back spacer, which is a really nice feature to have, because if you don't want to run a lanyard, it doesn't look strange or funky. RJ doesn't do that. They like to put a nice thick hole there and show it off. And it's awesome. I don't mind it at all. The only thing is, from certain angles, when you take pictures of the knife, say like this, and I'm shooting back here, it sometimes looks like there's a screw missing. But it's just one thing that I've noticed. But that's the RJ Martin design. That's their, this would probably be their, Q36 SS, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Beautiful knife, but with that inlay. So yeah, you can run a lanyard, you can not, totally up to you. The milling is just absurd though on the back of this. And if I'm guessing, I want to grab that Russian Overkill one more time, because this looks more coarse than the milling on that knife, just based on memory. And I apologize in advance if I'm wrong. Yeah, it's a little coarser. More in line with the Molten. So I was right. Huh. Let's grab the Molten. I just want to double check that is identical, eh? Yeah. Cool. You never know. This is when I sit and I look at a knife for half an hour and talk to you guys about it, these are the things that my mind kind of goes to. So obviously a nice coarse radial kind of pattern there. And you can kind of see it goes from like coarse, and then it kind of works its way tighter and tighter and tighter. That's what she said. And it just looks really, really nice. It's a beautiful design. Really like it. And I love the detail on the top here below the flipper tab. I really like those milling lines personally. And they just look so good. So sharp. And the other thing that is just a classic on these, and I've always loved, is around the collar here, the milling. You can kind of get these little bulges where the tooling lines start and stop, and it just looks so unique. I love that so much. Now, in terms of it in hand, so I talked earlier, it feels fatter than the Russian Overkill. We've got some beautiful jimping, which matches the back spacer as well, the nice pattern. And then the jimping itself goes down into the frame, which is kind of the classic RJ Martin design aspect. It's very functional. Some people say this looks hideous and hate the knife and they should burn it. I think that I love it personally, and I think it looks terrific. So Like anything, it's all subjective. I think that it just opens up all of this as a usable interface for your thumb. If you want to kind of even go in front of that and go down the blade, it's nice and flat right down to the tip. So you can kind of do whatever you want with it. I really like this feel. I really, really like this design element. Really like it. And I like how it's matching the back spacer. It's just such a nice little overall look to things. And then obviously that S90V should be poking out in there, and in the background when you look at it, it should just kind of, you should be able to see it on the blade on the inside, which is a nice little Easter egg. I always love that. The flipper tab itself has no jimping on it. It's raw dog, but the feel of it is beautiful. You don't really need it. As well, I always like to say this. So it pokes up a little bit. It's got a bit of a pocket pecker. That's the RJ thing. But if you look at the hump of the profile of this, and if you were to follow that in a line, it's actually kind of like right on that right on that line. So it's not bad at all. But it is raw dog, so it feels right. It's vertical as well, so you're not worried too much about having some grip there. And I can tell you, I don't think you'll ever worry about missing any jimping on that. So that's just another subjective thing. As well, it's going to fly out, right? So I always like to show this compared to some of the other collaborations. Really, guys, pay attention to the orientation of the flipper tab in terms of the center of the actual pivot that it rotates around. When that is behind the pivot, it means it's like you're putting it into a bigger gear on a bicycle wheel, where you're pulling it and it's slowing down the rotation of the kick. When this moves out in front of the center point, you're speeding it up. So if I grab my Tom Mayo Shiro and I show this is the one I always like to show when it's behind the center. You might think, oh, it's got a really sloppy, soft detent. No, it's just the fact that you're pulling it and you can fail it because you have so much leverage, because it's like a bigger gear on a bike. So you just gotta pull it, give it a little juice, give it a little kick, and it comes out. On this guy, you can kind of see it's at that sweet spot. It's, in front of center, center's there. It's right on that line, which tells you it's going to be a nice, tuned, normal feeling kick out. There's other knives where it's actually in front of that, and they just hammer out. And they feel, they're the ones that launch out and just crack, and they feel pretty interesting. So this is a nice, I'd say, middle spot, but with that harder RJ Martin kind of feel to it, the breaking point, it just feels real nice. Real nice. But I always like to show that because it's, no one really seems to talk about the relation between the two locations there. The pocket clip, as I mentioned earlier, matches the back spacer as well as the pivot collar. And I think, does there some? No, never mind. Yeah, so it's kind of got that look to it, that polished stone wash, which is beautiful. I'd also assume it's titanium. It puts pressure as well. If you can kind of see, it leans on top of the frame rather than the lock bar. Maybe it's easier to show here. So it is angled down to one side and is not leaning on the lock bar itself. It's leaning all the pressure on this. So when you hold this knife, or if you're to launch it, like any Shiro, I always just say, put your fingers on the clip, 1, 2, 3, whatever you want to do, and you're never going to have any issues pulling it out. If you put your hands on the lock bar and you try to pull this thing out, like if I put my finger right on it like this and I'm trying to pull it, it's not going anywhere. So it's sensitive, it's delicate. Just remember that. Hold the clip. You're never going to have any problems. The same milling pattern is found on the back, and let's be honest here, it's perfectly aligned between the two pieces, which is awesome. Another level of detail that they don't have to do, but they do anyway. So you've got patterns on both, and they line up beautifully well. Oh my god, I'm just looking underneath the clip. The same pattern continues. It's hard to see without the light. Let me grab my little light here. This might be a long video, guys. I just feel it. There we go. So underneath that clip, it's all milled. Oh my god. And this should be the same as the Molten, I would assume. We're going to grab that other knife just to compare. We still have that same kind of box around the clip milled out. Yes, we do. I don't see any design element changes as far as I can see between the two. Can you guys see anything? Trying not to clunk these together, but I don't see anything different. But there's always something, right? Because they'll learn from making these and make subtle changes, very subtle. And sometimes I see them, sometimes I don't. So as far as I can tell, they're the same. But I'm also wrong all the time. You can ask my wife, even when I think I'm right. Yeah, beautiful milling underneath the clip, and I'm referring to underneath the flat part of the clip on the actual lock bar. And then underneath, if you were to take this guy off internally, which is behind there, there's going to be a screw on the inside to take this off. You can tell there's even more milling underneath the actual clip itself on the flip side. I'm not taking this apart. This is going to be my knife, this one. And I'm going to keep it, cherish it, and continue building my collection of collaboration pieces and hopes that, you know, they appreciate over time. And you have to love them, right? You have to... The knives I keep in my collection, like this, you have to really like. And I love blues. You know, a lot of my personal collection that I end up keeping is either, you know, Thai or blue. And I don't know why that is. It's just my taste and something I've developed over time. This is another one that's just stunning. Another thing. So we've talked about the fit, the finish, all this stuff. Talked about that backspacer. The Molten had milling underneath the backspacer, and this is no different. So you see, if you look inside this, you see how there's a channel cut into the backspacer, like a centering channel, and it should be on this end, and there should be another spot on this end. I don't know if you can see inside, but there should be multiple spots. There you go, you can see it. These are like little things that add emphasis to the centering of the knife that has no functionality to it other than it's a show-off of their aerospace grade tolerances. That's like, look guys, we're doing this. If the blade is not perfectly goddamn centered, there's going to be problems. But because it is, because we're skilled Russians making some of the finest production knives in the world, we're going to add emphasis to things. We're going to show off what we can do. And even if you look at the backspacer, look at this, guys. Like, are you kidding me? Look how freaking centered that is. And they're adding emphasis to it by building in less tolerance on both sides of it. Like, this is the kind of thing, like, they're hand ground blades. And that is a very small gap. And I believe the blade sits just above it. If I were to look straight down the backspacer, I believe they should sit just above it. I don't know if the camera's going to show that, but it's usually just a little bit above. It's never below, it's just above. On these ones anyway. God, the tolerance there is just nuts. And it's one thing to look at it on a camera and experience it like this and all that stuff, but it's another to physically look at this in your hands and realize, like, you know, I've got big hands. These are small, tight tolerances here that we're working with. And it's just at a whole different level. Like, even their production pieces are getting to that point now where it's just off the charts. You know, look at the that F95 NL. Come on, man, focus. Does not want to focus, eh? There you go. Just super tight tolerances, and they're just adding emphasis to these things on detail level that you really don't have to do. I've got a video on this coming up, by the way. It may have already been up depending on my release, but we'll see. That's a very cool knife. I love that Shiro's doing more blues. They're doing, the Hattie blue. They're doing the Quantium in blue. They're doing the NLs, the mini Quantums in blues. They're really digging blues lately. And I don't know if they've always done that or if it's just me, but I feel like they're doing lots of blues now, which is I'm for it. Back to the backspacer. There will be some purists that say, hey, if I'm looking at the backspacer right now, what's the problem with it? Well, there's a gap in front of it. I don't know why that gap is there, and I also don't know why that gap would bother some people, but it is. It's there. Does it look finished? Absolutely. Could they plug that gap up? They probably could. Is there a reason for it? I'm sure there is. So it is what it is. I've looked at all of them. They all have this gap on the RJ Martin collab pieces, and I'm assuming there's a reason for it. If somebody knows the reason, I would love to know, because I'll add that to my repertoire of random things I mentioned during my half-hour discussions on these pieces. But I'd love to know why that's there, because it's just a nice detail, but it is a bit of an eyesore to some people, and kind of is what it is. So let's just kind of review. I've talked about the knife in hand. I love the little hump on the blade. I've talked about the bear, the RJM logo, S90V, which is cool, the flat top, the drop point. I did not mention the edges of this knife are polished on the blade, so if you are looking at one and you're buying one, make sure that the edges are nice and polished. All right. Fun fact, S90V is Sergey's favorite metal material to use, to work with. And you can kind of see in this one that there's a reason they love S90V. It's done very, very well. So we talked about that. Fit in hand, I love it. I did not mention this as well, how the flipper tab builds in a nice little hook onto your knife. I never really mentioned that, but it is a nice, you feel locked right in. And if you are, in theory, stabbing something, it is nice to push against, so you're not going to go through to your hand and hit yourself. So that's a nice feature, and you feel very locked in. The flat profile of the actual handle itself is not layered to different spots for your fingers. Sometimes they do like to curve that depending to your two knuckles, and then it drops back. And I will show that on the... Let's grab that F95 again. You can see how they do some contouring around that. So your front two and then your back two. So it's a very basic ergonomic knife from that perspective. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all. It feels great. I've got plenty of room for a lanyard, plenty of room for an alien sixth finger to hang off the back here. And, it's not going to be an issue. I've talked about the coarse micromilling, which looks phenomenal. The micarta denim pops out, makes the handle feels nice and thick, nice and full in your hand. And I talked about the polish on the backspacer, which I don't know what it is, but I assume it's polished stonewash, which I've said probably 45 times. These are individually numbered, and they're on the heel, I believe. Well, at least they were on the heel, right under the clip, or in front of, which you should see right here. So I'm going to grab this, focus on this, and then bring that in here. So there we go. This particular one is number 146 of 200 pieces. So a little bit more of these than the Molten Overkills. They only did 100 of those, I believe, 100, whereas the Soft Overkills were 300. So kind of in between the two. Table at 2023, this guy was, I think they were either 1650 or 1750. So I assume, they're going to come out and be, 2000 to 2400 right away and kind of hold that low 2000 mark, I think, for a little while. And I think that's kind of going to be US where it's going to hold. Just based on the fact that, you look at an RQ36, they're close to $3,000 now. You look at the Soft Overkills, they're high 1000s. The Molten Overkills, kind of low 2000s to mid. the Russian Overkill's low 2000s, so I would assume it's going to be kind of in that same territory. It is S90V. It is, you know, the only one they've done with micarta inlays on it. I think it looks terrific, and the raw tie frame with the blast on it really pops out compared to some of the other ones. I think it's going to be an absolute home run, but that's just me. I don't know what other people are going to say about it. If, you know, pumping out 200 of these, I'm curious what if any problems will arise. That's a big volume commitment. So hopefully every one of them is knocked out very well. From the one I have here, it's beautifully done. Absolutely beautifully done. And I just love the denim, man. Like, I just think it looks so cool. And the detail that you don't really see is on the edge work. And how it's just like they've put all this beveled edges into it. It just looks so good. And it's blue. Like, come on, what more do you want? This would be great to wear with a pair of jeans. It wouldn't look out of place. Great weekend knife, and not dressy, just a good all the time use knife. S90V, super standard, premium super steel, and just a really nicely well done knife. And that color is just getting better and better as the light in my office goes away and I'm more reliant on the actual light above the camera. That is really popping now. I think that looks real sharp. I love the color work they do. So that looks great. And what else? I think I've kind of gone over everything with this knife. Talked about the blade, the flats, the obviously the micarta, the lanyard hole, the milling on the back, the fact that it's a 1 of 200. They're individually numbered, and then obviously the milling underneath that backspacer is terrifically done and just a thing of beauty. And oh, the roller bearings are, they usually put it somewhere in here. Usually on the front somewhere. And I would assume this would be no different, but there's usually a stamp for the roller bearings. Oh, there it is. Right in front of the tab here. So there is a spot where they kind of show that. And it looks like a little wheel right in front there. Super cool. And there's nothing on the other side, eh? No. Oh, and I should say it's skeletonized like hell. I didn't mention that, but on the inside of this thing, like, I don't know if you were looking at it while I was showing you the inside of the backspacer, it's light. It's a very light knife. So everything's all machined and micro milled in the back, underneath, and then holes for all the micarta to pop through. It's a beautifully done knife. This is just a stunning knife. I think people are going to really like this one. So there you go. I apologize that the video is so long today. I'm just excited. Anytime I get a new knife, I get all excited, and I think this is a home run. I think it's an absolute home run. It fits in the line well, and it's just different enough in the Overkill line, because I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, another Overkill, and oh man, you know, how many of these are they going to do? And look, it's not like there's overlap here. They're all different. Different blade materials, different steels, different complete designs. You know, yes, this is very similar, but it's micarta with S90V instead of carbon fiber with MagnaCut. And a different, you know, clip and a different collar and a different backspacer. So yes, you know what? You're building off a design, an RJ Martin, which is like a world-class knife design, and you're putting different materials on them, and you know, are they going to stop here? I don't know. If they came out with another one, would I be surprised? No, I wouldn't. You know, would some people, the collectors, be like, that's enough, you're devaluing? Maybe. But I would welcome it. It's a terrific design. Why not make more? You know, it's a great knife. So, anyway, that is the Denim Overkill, or with jeans micarta, on the Shirogorov RJ Martin collaboration, 1 of 200, and filming this in December 2023. So I don't know how this video is going to age, or if it will age, or if it will get buried, but that's the timeline for you guys watching, and hopefully it made sense. Hopefully it was a good video, and you guys are all stoked to check out one of these guys. And at the time of filming this, I don't know what the feedback on the knife is, what it is, and haven't really checked the forums, but I think it's going to be a big hit. I think guys are going to really like it because it's a beauty. I just love RJ Martins. And I should also say this before I close out. If you haven't ever tried an authentic RJ Martin, not a Shiro, an authentic RJ Martin, this is the closest thing to that you'll ever experience. It ticks the boxes. You know, an authentic RJ Martin, right now, some of them are in excess of $5,000 US, $6,000 US. Okay? This is a third of the price. And feels every bit as good. And in some cases, the detailer, it's even higher. So, it's tremendous value. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by, guys. I appreciate you. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, or add me on Instagram, bladezilla.ca, or send me an email. Check out the website, bladezilla.ca, and just message, chat. First and foremost, I'm a knife whore, so love chatting with you guys. All right, have yourselves a good week, and we'll talk soon. See ya. Peace.